Well, welcome to one of the most fascinating people and conversations we're going to have in a long time. And I want to introduce you, and I'm almost tempted to call you Dr. Peter Cunningham, because if I owned a university, I would give you an honorary doctorate.
Thank you very much, Kurt.
Because I've never heard anybody believe or claim or say that they believe they can solve the homeless challenge in the UK and in my state of California, namely in Los Angeles, and it's possible. And you founded and headed up an organization called Green Pastures that just doesn't work with the homeless. You give them dignity, you place them in jobs, they get a life. You have people from prisons coming in, very few of them go back to prison. So not only can you solve the homeless crisis, it's almost like you can solve the homelessness, the prison, the knife challenges, the crime. And if only, the churches could get fully behind what you're doing, we could make massive change, not just in the UK, but in my country as well. And I introduce you to Pete Cunningham. Great to have you here with us.
Thanks, Kurt. Great to be with you.
So tell us just in a nutshell what Green Pastures is and does.
Okay, we started 19 years ago as a local church, and we were very, very challenged about the fact of the people that were sleeping under the pier. For 4 years previously, we'd been housing them over the Christmas period up to March. Then 2 of them died in quick succession. Wow. And that really touched our hearts because we'd got to know them. And we were praying every morning and reading the scriptures systematically. And on that particular day, we'd have bad news from the local council who we'd worked with to get some money to help with the homeless that were in the town. And they'd taken the money and they'd refurbished some flats above shops in Lord Street. And at the end of the day, none of the people under the pier were housed. And we felt quite frustrated about it. In fact, I complained to the Almighty saying we worked hard with the local council, but not a penny spent. And it was on that particular morning when we were moaning at the Almighty, we were reading the scriptures systematically, that we were reading Luke chapter 10.
Wow.
And I don't know about you, but I'm a bit thick with the scriptures. Now and again, I get a bit of revelation. And it was on this day, after reading that passage most probably 100 times, that suddenly the light switched on. And as we came to the end of that reading, where it talks about the Good Samaritan, it says, the man said to the innkeeper, and if I owe you anything, I will pay you when you come back. And we suddenly felt the Lord say, I didn't tell you to go with your cap out to the local authority, but to trust in me, because I can house these people. And so we said, well, Lord, how do we go about it? He said, put your hands in your own pocket. And so I cobbled together £6,000. I was 57 then. One of the ladies in the church mortgaged one of her properties and put 25 grand in, and someone else put some pocket money in every month, and we went out and bought our first house.
Wow.
Now, we did say to the Almighty, we don't think it's a good idea because we're going to put alcoholics in here and they'll wreck the property. And at the end of the day, we'll lose all our money, but we'll be like those at the wedding of Cana of Galilee, just believe that the water's going to be turned into wine, which it has been now.
Now, okay, so you started it when you were 57, okay?
Yeah.
I'm 58, so I'm really getting inspired.
You're just about ready to get going.
You gave all your money, you put your own money into the pot as well. And, but I went onto your website, right? And I saw some figures, and it's like you have this countdown, this little clock, it says how many homeless people have actually been housed. And I think it's up to 1,038 people and counting.
Correct.
So, as a viewer, you might look at Pete, and he does look sweet. He's very kind. You weren't always like that, but Jesus came into your life, and you are now.
Yeah.
But I'm just looking at some figures, and we're going to kind of fill these figures in later. You have over 70 Christian partnerships. Okay, you have 150 churches participating. You have 10 new beds that open up every month. You just told me, over £30 million in investments.
Yep.
Because you're not just asking people for donations. Of course, you're welcome to give, but you can invest and actually earn a 5% return if you keep the money in over 5 years, okay? So you have 1,040 loan stock investors, so over 1,000 people that have actually put down money to invest. And 75% of the loans are renewed.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And then you have 1,038 people housed and cared for. And you know, you're housing prisoners. Very few of them are actually going back to prison. Many of them are coming to the Lord. Yeah, just fill us in. What does it mean to be like a partner with you? Say if somebody, a viewer or a church, wants to partner with Green Pastures, how can they do that? What are the steps?
Yeah, really, Kurt, we believe we're one body. Mm-hmm. And we felt that when God called us to actually help other churches, we were only being part of the body. Mm-hmm. And therefore our partners are truly partners. We're part of one body. Mm-hmm. We're going to serve Jesus together. Mm-hmm. And what they can't do is they can't afford to buy the house. Mm-hmm. So they love the people in their town. Mm-hmm. They know which ones they want to work with. So whether they're working with failed asylum seekers, refugees, whether they're working with alcoholics, families that are difficulties, whichever is their choice they feel God is calling them to. When they come to us, they say, God is calling us to this. Can you help us? And we say, well, actually, we can help you as long as we fulfill the conditions we have with one another. We'll buy you the house, we'll put the money in, we'll find the property for you, and we'll set you up. We'll actually help you to do the claims for your housing benefit, make sure your claims are done, make sure you've got the right legal agreements going in with your tenants, but you've got a guarantee to love these people like Jesus wants you to, and go in and help them and minister to them. Have they got bread in the cupboard? Have they got enough electricity on their meters? Have they got the doctors they need to see, the dentists they need to see? Do they need to go to the hospital? You need to show them the love and compassion of Christ. If you do that, we'll partner with you.
Okay. So say, for example, I know you've been in Southport, okay? So I'm a pastor of a church of 400 people in Southport. We're not poor. I mean, you know, blue-collar workers, steady income stream for the church, and we have a vision where we want to help the homeless people in our area. So how do we sign something? Do we get our people to invest? How does that work? How do you motivate people to get involved?
Well, the fact is that you come to us and you say, we want to do this. We come back to you and say, here's an agreement. And what we have is we've got quite a lengthy agreement now, because over the years we recognise all the mistakes and the pitfalls there are in it. So we say you need to do this, 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 and this, and this. This will help you in the future, so you don't make any mistakes and you don't fall in any holes and you don't actually upset people instead of helping them. Wow. And if you sign this agreement and we agree to take you on board, we're partners. We're part of the body of Christ. We're going to function together. Now, the great thing is that it releases people to the ministry. It releases them to get on with what they feel God is calling them to do. Yeah. Now, because of that, sometimes other landlords come in and say, we'd like to actually help you house people. So, in fact, although we've only bought enough property to house just over 1,000, we're housing 3,500 people across the UK.
Wow. So, for example, say if I'm a member of this congregation, one of your team members comes in, we're getting motivated. I've just inherited, I don't know, £100,000 from my mother, and I'm looking to invest. Now, what I like about you is not just giving the money, although you're most welcome to do that, but it's investing, and that's something new to me. We had lunch together, and you really excited me. Kurt, if you have some extra money, you could do this. And tell us about that. Okay.
Then let's go back to the root of what Christ said to us. Okay. Invest your money. So when we started, we invested our money in the kingdom. Yeah. And then when someone came to us and said, we can't do the job you're doing, but we've got some money, we looked at the interest rates over 30 years and we decided that 5% was a right interest rate to pay for someone who's going to lend us money for over a 5-year period. So if you invest with us, we can pay you up to 4% for the first 4 years. Over that, we pay you 5%. Now, at the end of the day, when people want to give their money to Christ, we decided we didn't want it giving to us. So it was not going to give us your money. So we asked the Lord to give us a financial model that will work on people being paid interest on their money.
But isn't that true? Jesus didn't say just give. He said invest your money. Wow.
So the fact is, we have a financial money model that actually says we can pay you 5%, we can pay you 4%, because we know the money that's going to come in, and it comes in from housing benefit. So we put the tenant in the house, we claim the money that is legally theirs to pay their rent. That rent comes into us, it pays all the expenses we have to house them, to look after them, to pay the insurance on the house, to pay our staff that we have, and pay 5%. Now, let me tell you something else that's interesting.
Okay.
When the interest rate failed, good friends of ours came and said, now, why don't you drop your interest rate? Because 3% would be great.
Yeah.
So we prayed about it. We said, Lord, what do you want us to do about this? And the Lord spoke to us. And he said to us this. He said, it was light in Goshen when it was dark in Egypt. And he reminded us that in the Old Testament, when Moses was working in Egypt, that when it was dark in Egypt, it was light in Goshen. The people of God did not suffer because of the collapse of the nation. And God said to us, because the nation's gone down the Swanee, you can still pay the 5%, keep paying 5%. So we've kept paying 5%.
Yeah. Now, I know you were a stockbroker.
Yeah.
So how does this, I think the wisdom that you learned, you're applying it, because usually on Christian television, we're always saying, send us money, send us money, send us money. But it's very rare when you hear somebody say, no, we want you to invest your money, and you will actually earn money from your investment. Or if you just want to leave your investment in when you pass away and will it, hey, that's a great thing you can do.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, we're saying, we will pay you to end homelessness in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So if you loan us your money, we'll pay you and we'll end homelessness.
Because it's amazing. I remember as an American, I had an investment, and I looked at my investment, and I saw where my money was being invested in, like cigarette companies. All of these things that I didn't agree with. So many of us, we might have, even government pensions sometimes that are not invested in ethical companies. Many of us, at least in my country, we're supporting institutions and companies that we wouldn't have anything to do ordinarily. So tell me a story about like an investor and how it's changed their life, investing their money in something that's beneficial.
Okay, I can think of one guy that came to us, and he was just about a Christian about 10 years ago. And Johnny, when he first came to us, he said, I love what you're doing. I'd like to drop a little bit in. I think you put about £1,000 in. And we got to know him. We encouraged him. We encouraged him, in fact, in his business he was involved in. And he's grown and grown and grown and grown. And now he's got £500,000 with us, which is absolutely terrific. But the other thing is, because his business has grown, and we have seen that we need now to go into building houses, his business is about actually finding land where you can develop the land for building. So last week he came to us, he said, would you like this time to invest some money with us? Because he said, if this project goes ahead, we will give you £4 million.
But this is almost like a paradigm shift in Christian giving. As
Absolutely.
we hear about Christian giving, but really with Jesus, notice the parable of the talents, etc., was about investing.
Yeah.
So it's a huge, massive paradigm shift. I mean, the world is usually about invest your money, and hopefully in 20 years you would have invested it in Google and you'll walk away with $1 gazillion. But this is investing in the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
So tell us a story about somebody, let's make it difficult, maybe an ex-offender, somebody who's had a violent past, somebody, you told me that, give me the prison stats again.
Well, at this moment in time, we're housing most probably about 700-800 ex-offenders.
Okay.
And I told you the story of one particular group where we'd done some research, and it said that in that area, 70% of the people were coming out of prison were re-offending and going back into prison.
Hold on, 70% of the people?
70% of the people.
So all the UK, so the government's answer, build more prisons.
That's right.
In my country, build more prisons,
That's right.
privatize them. So what I'm saying is you can not only solve the housing crisis or the crime crisis, but the prison crisis as well.
Absolutely.
So tell me about maybe one person
Well,
that comes to mind.
we measured it at 68%. And we reckoned that the people we were housing then, we were housing about 120 in that particular area, it was down to 12%. So we'd gone from 68%.
Wow.
So that there was that whole block of 56% were not going back into prison. And that was saving the government about, or us as taxpayers, £4 million. And then we showed this to the government. They said, oh, we're only looking after A category prisoners instead of D's and E's,
Yeah.
which are the worst category. And so later on, we had the government come and do the research, and we found out we were wrong. It wasn't 68%, it was 70% reoffending. So more people were reoffending, and they came back and said 4.5% of reoffending with you. And so we had to apologise and say, we're really sorry we said 12% because we were 7.5% better at the reoffending and we were 2% worse on the actual going back to prison.
Okay, so dear viewer, if you got this is incredible, you know. So out of those people, only 4.5% reoffended. That means if I invest, say, £10,000 with you, that money is going to, in 5 years' time, give me a return of 5%, which is fantastic. And even during the crisis, it was still 5%. And I had friends who were stockbrokers that was lower than that. If you got 3% or even 2% during that time, 2008, 2010, you were doing well. So anyway, you're investing not only just to get money, but to doing something that the government should be doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we won't have time to talk about the fact that I said to you, we've got the senior government official coming to see us on the 23rd of this month, who's going to talk to us about how we can help them as a government to solve the problem of reoffending. And so we're going to be telling them how we can solve the problem of reoffending, and we want to see it drop in 10 years.
Wow. So that mission statement where you say, you know, releasing the church nationwide to end homelessness, that's feasible. It's actually possible.
Yeah.
It's not just ending homelessness, it's preventing, you know, 70% of people going back to prison. We always complain on Revelation TV. We'll not complain. We point out that there's a lawlessness in Britain today, that there's knife crimes, that crime is out of control. And Boris Johnson says, 20,000 policemen. And that's his answer. But I don't know if that's going to solve the problem. But this is intelligent, it's wise, and it's an investment in the kingdom that's showing practical results. Tell us about maybe an ex-offender, somebody you know, just their story.
Okay, I mean, if I look at Chris, Chris came to us, let's say 9 years ago, and he was very violent and he was in and out of prison for his violence. And he started going out with a lady and he battered her, and we were housing them at the time. We stepped in, we said, hey, you can't do this. We're going to have to separate you. You can have a bed sit, she can have a flat, and you're going to have to start courting. And that guy began to court the lady, and some 5 years ago we married them because he began to get over his problem.
Beautiful.
And now, although he is not able to work full-time, he is working for us part-time, helping with decorating and renovating property. So he's a transformed character. Now, if you met him, he looks terribly threatening. He's one of these guys that you say, I don't want to be in this guy's presence because he looks so awesome and gruesome. But he's turned around and he comes to church from time to time. He's made a commitment to Christ. He's not fabulous yet, but he has really changed. And he hasn't gone back to prison.
So what percentage of people know Jesus in this adventure?
We reckon between 1 in 3 and 1 in 5 come to know Jesus when we house them. So, in fact, the dividend to the kingdom is great. So we always say when people invest, it's not only they're getting good return, but also they're investing in people's lives, but also they're seeing people come to Jesus because their money is helping to win souls, and it's one of the best rates of winning souls for Jesus I've ever come across.
So if you could take yourself, become a Christian biblical stockbroker, this is a good stock to invest your money in.
Yeah.
It has returns, 360-degree returns on every side.
360 degree, I like it. Yeah, that's right, Kurt. It really is.
Were you telling me something something, I think migrants, a lot of people, Brexit and so on, one of the arguments, they're coming in, they're invading Britain, and maybe it is God bringing people in, but you were telling me about a church or community somewhere where Muslims were housed and they became Christians and something like that. Tell us that story. That just fascinates me.
That was wonderful. I was up there about 6 weeks ago speaking to them. It's a church in Stockton, up in the northeast. And it's a Baptist church, and about 7 or 8 years ago they began a ministry to the Iranians that were coming in, some of the Muslims that were coming in, and they've begun to house them and counsel them. Some of them became failed asylum seekers. You have asylum seekers. Once you get status to remain, you become a refugee then. But some of them fail and have to appeal, and then they become failed asylum seekers, and they have no recourse to public funds. So they're helping these people, they're helping asylum seekers and the refugees when people get status. And gradually it's grown and grown, and they have 50 or 60 of these people that have come to know Jesus that are actually in their church worshipping God. When I was there, I was just amazed at how gentle and lovely these people were. Absolutely phenomenal to see what that church has actually achieved by going out into the community and saying, we are going to be the hands and the feet of Jesus. We are not just going to be the words of Jesus, because sometimes we just want to tell people, you need Jesus. You need to have your hands and feet as well working.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're showing the love of Christ, and these people respond to the love of Christ by coming to know him.
Wow, amazing. Now, just for our viewers, how did you become a Christian? I mean, I heard about your life and even your father and the Old Baileys and this and that, and how did you become a follower of Christ?
The thing is, I never ever wanted to become a Christian. I hated it. My father was in the Old Bailey under sentence. He had embezzled money off his firm, and they took him to the Old Bailey. He had a 4-day trial, and while he was down in the cells below the Old Bailey, a Christian came and witnessed to him. And my father found Christ, and I was about 10 years old. Now, my father was a habitual gambler, and at the end of the day, we were a very impoverished family. So, like I said to you, we would have bread and dripping for Sunday lunch. That was it. That was the fat and the juices that were left over from cooking a joint that we would have. But when he became a Christian, the whole of our lifestyle changed, and he began to send my brother and sister and myself and my mother to different churches to see how they were. And we ended up in a London City mission with a very firebrand of a preacher who used to preach hellfire to us. And my brother, my sister and my mother came to Christ, and I thought they'd gone crackers. And I was 13, 14 then, and I was not interested in anything of the sort. And in some ways, I got a good job. I, like you say, worked in stockbroking. I had lots of money. I had 12 suits in my wardrobe. I was going out with 3 women at the same time. I liked a life of wine, women and song. And I lived at home, and I lived at home because I didn't have to pay any rent. And it was just the life of Riley. And when I was 21, I'd gone to the Goldsmiths Academy Art Ball. I'd got paralytically drunk. I'd fallen over in the art gallery, the art studio, the live art studio where the animals were in the hay, and my friends had found me. I'd stayed out 2 or 3 nights, and when I came home, my father had decided he'd had enough of me.
Okay.
And so he said, right, well, you've got to leave. So I packed a bag and was ready to go and stay with friends who had flats and things like that. But my mother pleaded for me on the door and said, Harold, what will become of him if we throw him out? And a mother's love was really great. And at the end of the day, my father relented and said, okay, you can stay, but you don't bring any women in the house and you don't get drunk anymore. And my brother was always talking to me about Jesus, and I hated it. In fact, you know, there was a time his fiancée had bought him a beautiful 8-day clock. I stood on the back, he'd smashed it in pieces because he kept talking to me about Jesus, and I didn't want to hear it. And he knew there was trouble in the house, and he approached me again and said, we've got a youth meeting going this Saturday, why don't you come to it? And I thought to myself, in my cunningness of my mind, I'd go to this youth meeting. My parents would think I'm turning over a new leaf, and I could get to the Christmas parties I'd planned to go to just the next month. And I went to all the Christmas parties, and I never felt satisfied with life. I just didn't feel satisfied. I had everything going for me, but I wasn't satisfied. And on January the 1st, 1964, I decided I'd go to church by myself. So I got up and I thought I'd turn over a new leaf, and I went to this Assemblies of God church in Walthamstow, and I sat in the 5th row from the front on the seat right against the wall there, 5 seats in, and the place filled up, and I felt like a fish out of water. And I said, you know, if I ever get back out of this place today, I'm never going to church again. And then they began to sing and worship God, and then they began to break bread, and a man stood up who I hadn't seen, didn't know from Adam. And it was as though he knew a life story of myself. And he said, you know, I know you're going out with these women. I know you're embezzling your firm. I know you. And for the first time in my life, for the first time in my life, I felt the presence of a righteous God. And I wanted to escape the presence of this righteous God. And I wanted the ground to open and swallow me from the presence of the righteous God. And then this man said at the end, God loves you. And if you give your life to him, he will never fail you and never let you down. And I said, God, if you could love me like that, you can have my life. And I tell you what, it was like a burden fell off my back. I left that church a metre off the ground, 3 foot off the ground. The truth is, I've never come down.
This is what fascinates me. You know, I've met so many Christians, you know, and their life is like this, whereas your life, even though you've been through hard times, you know, your life is like that in 5% investment, you know. It's going up and up and up and up and up.
I am amazed, Kurt, at the goodness of God to me. The things that are happening today are amazing. Absolutely amazing. Let me tell you something.
We have 1 minute left.
I can't tell you this.
But if you have any last words, short words to our audience, now's the time. 50 seconds.
Listen, love God with all your heart, serve him with all your heart, do your best for him with all your heart, because that's the only way to live for Jesus.
What are those rules, those routines you told me about?
When I got saved, he said, read the Bible every day, talk to Jesus every day, tell about Jesus every day, and be with people who love God as much as you can. If you do that, you'll be successful. Thanks, Kurt.
Fantastic. And so remember, Pete was 57 when he was called to this work with the homeless. And we want to really encourage people. We want to encourage people not to say the work of God is for the young people. You know, if you look at Caleb, he was 80 years old and still did the work of the Lord. So we really want to encourage you to hear God. He'll give you the ability and the power. And thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. We love you guys, and we will see you another time.